I neglected my visualizations website, Things Made Thinkable, for too long. Here's what I did to bring it back to life. 1. Fixed the aspect ratio. 2. Made it reactive. 3. Embraced SVG. 4. Started a mailing list. 5. Stopped reusing code. 6. Switched to newer fonts. 7. Reduced bloat. 8. Added social meta tags. 9. Started tweeting about it. 10. Quit my jobs. Plus what I didn't do. And the result. Thing number 1. I fixed the aspect ratio. Back in 2010, people used computers with large landscape screens. So I made all my visualizations 960 pixels wide and about 480 pixels high. Seemed like a good idea at the time. I didn't think about computers with small portrait screens, soon to become known as phones. From now on, all my visualizations will aim at an aspect ratio of 1:1 and will be properly scaled to fit any size of screen. Mobile last, but better late than never. Thing number 2, I made it reactive. Back in 2010, I decided to split the text below my visualization into 2 columns for easy reading. Easy on those large landscape screens, that is. I've now put in place a reactive design, 2 columns on a wide screen, 1 column on a narrow screen. Thing number 3, I embraced SVG. Back in 2010, browser support for SVG was patchy and there were no good libraries for SVG animation. So I animated PNG images using Prototype and Scriptaculous. Anyone? And later I used jQuery. It was clunky and it didn't allow scaling to different screen sizes. That's why I fixed the width of the visualizations at 960 pixels. Now SVG works in all but the oldest browsers, and Snap SVG is a powerful SVG animation library. So no more bitmap images, it's SVG all the way for me. Thing number 4, I started a mailing list. Back in 2010, RSS feeds were all the rage. Email was dead, no one built mailing lists anymore. Would anyone give you their email address when they could just subscribe to an RSS feed? Well, it turned out that RSS feeds were not long for this world. Email, it turns out, is immortal. I've now started building a mailing list. With all those tens of thousands of page views, just think how big it would be now if I'd started in 2010. Thing number 5, I stopped reusing code. My code had, over the years since 2010, broken into countless itty-bitty files. Each file contains shared code for headers, footers, notes, sources, and so on. Shared code is brittle code. I can no longer change a single line of code in any one of those itty-bitty files without risking breaking some 10-year-old web page or other. So now, as far as possible, I put all the code for a single page into a single PHP file, a single CSS file, and a single JavaScript file. Thing number 6, I switched to newer fonts. Nothing beats a website like a web-safe font. I switched to my go-to fonts, Belfair and Lato. I also self-hosted them to avoid subjecting my visitors to Google's insatiable data gorging. Belfair and Lato aren't especially new fonts, but they're easy on the eye. Thing number 7, I reduced bloat. Sometimes it's expedient to use other people's code on your website. The trouble is it always comes at a price. JS Socials added several extra files which slowed down page loading, which no doubt hurt my website's ranking on Google. FontAwesome involved loading a font from fontawesome.com, which was slow. I only used a handful of characters in the font. Google Analytics fed more data to the beast that is known as Google. It also created cookies, which, according to Luddite laws, requires permission from users. I stripped it all out and wrote my own code to handle social sharing in analytics. It's now much simpler and much faster. Thing number 8. I added social meta tags. I don't know if you noticed, but social media has kind of grown since 2010. Back then, the only meta tags a self-respecting web page needed were the keywords and description tags. It seems astonishing now that search engines ever trusted web developers to list keywords for which their web pages should rank. These days you need a whole host of meta tags so that when somebody tweets a link to your web page, it appears with a beautiful image, title and description. Thing number 9, I started tweeting about it. Knowing I was 14 years late to the game, I searched Twitter for an available handle that bore even the remotest resemblance to my name. @Mark J. Jeffrey was already taken, of course, by someone who, despite having joined Twitter in 2010, hadn't added a profile picture and had only ever tweeted once. About a visualizations website, as it happened, called Things Made Thinkable. Hang on, that's me. Turns out I've had a Twitter account since 2010. I'd forgotten that I'd ever signed up. Time to start tweeting. Again, better late than never. Thing number 10. I quit my jobs. Why did I neglect my website for so long? For the last 7 years I've had a full-time job and a part-time job. That didn't leave much room for creating visualizations. Worse, the employment contract for one of my jobs seemed to claim ownership of everything I did, even in my spare time. Knowing that my employer might try to claim ownership of any visualization I created kind of took the joy out of it. The solution? I quit both my jobs. Incidentally, if quitting your job is something you're contemplating, you might want to check out one of my other podcasts called the Quit Work Podcast. Finally, here's what I didn't do. The Things Made Thinkable logo looks pretty retro these days. It's not a logo so much as the name of the website in italics, in the bulky font Georgia, in the basic colour #500080. Clearly, no designer was involved in the creation of this logo. I like it. It's the one thing I didn't change. The website wears its 2010 heritage with pride. If you want to see the results of my changes, you can go to thingsmadethinkable.com and compare and contrast my first visualization, called $1 Economies, circa 2010, 960 pixels wide, with my latest visualization, called Rivers of the Atlantic, circa 2022, scalable. Thanks for listening to Tangled Web. Join me for fresh insights into the future of the web every other week. Subscribe to the free newsletter, podcast or YouTube channel at tangledweb.media. Remember, the web has only just begun.